Casual here. Welcome to my latest build guide, in which I will be taking you through my Anomaly power minigun build. With this build you will be pretty much unkillable, be able to face tank multiple broodmothers, melt enemies and complete CT-15 expeditions solo with ease. And I really do mean with ease. This is probably the easiest build to play through CT-15s that I have come up with. I will put a summary of the build at the end of the video. Use the chapters to jump to the sections you are most interested in. But before we get into the build guide, I am working on other classes but wanted to know which ones you would like me to work on first. Let me know in the comments below. Let's get into it. The class tree for this build focuses on the bottom tree in order to buff Anomaly power, which increases the damage that our skills do, including the minigun. There are a few key design decisions that I made with the build that have dictated my choices here. In order to keep the minigun up at all time, we need a way to replenish ammo. After a lot of testing, I decided to go with two ways to do this. The primary way is through toxic lead, which replenishes 40% of our ammo when killing enemies afflicted with toxic. Applying toxic through blighted rounds is not an option, as you can't use it with the minigun. Taking blighted turret though works well. Not only does this apply toxic, it also does pretty reasonable damage, and more importantly procs adrenalizing antenna, boosting Anomaly power for the entire team by 30%. With blighted turret's very short cooldown, you will have this buff up all the time. The one challenge with turrets is that they have a mind of their own with regards to who they are targeting. So to give me a more reliable method of applying toxic, I have taken Brain Freeze, which adds toxic to my melee skill in addition to its normal freeze ability. I mentioned two ways of replenishing ammo. The second way is the mod Quartermaster, which you get from the Torrential Downpour's footgear. This allows you to fill your entire magazine every 45 seconds on demand, and all of your teammates' magazines. This might sound like overkill with toxic lead, but there is a good reason to take this mod and Fixing Wave. Toxic lead only procs when you kill enemies, while most of the time you can use ads to keep your ammo up, swapping between the boss and them when needed. On a couple of occasions the only thing left alive was the boss. This is where this mod shines. As you can see, I have not gone all the way to the end of the Anomaly class tree. This is because the only ordnance skill I have taken is Tool of Destruction, which is up all of the time, and so taking Tech Bond would be pointless. Saving 2 points in this tree allows me to pick up Wipeout, one of my favourite execution abilities, Fracture to increase damage against frozen enemies, Exposing Toxin and Mark for Execution to apply the more effective vulnerable, as well as some nice buffs to my survivability. The final thing to note is that I have not taken any cooldown abilities, because I don't need them with this build. Blighted Turret is already on a very short cooldown, my minigun is always up, and I am only using Fixing Wave for the Quartermaster ability, the cooldown of which you can't reduce with any other ability. We've already covered the skills and why I am taking them really, but to be clear, Tool of Destruction is the signature skill of this build, Blighted Turret applies Toxic and procs Adrenalizing Antenna, and Fixing Wave is my backup ammo replenishment, as well as a great help to keeping those squishy teammates up. Let's have a look at gear and mods. All of my armour has bonus Anomaly power on it and a healing buff. Anomaly power is essential for this build, boosting the damage of your minigun and turrets, so do stack as much of this as you possibly can. Healing makes you the tank that you are. With this build I have very high physical damage reduction, close to the 85% cap, which really smooths out any damage that I receive. With the buffs to healing I am stacking, it is easy to heal through this damage. There's just not enough damage in the game to take you down once your minigun starts spinning. I've easily tanked 2 broodmothers and a handful of alphas at the same time without a worry in the world. For your third stat, I would go with stasis power. Cooldown reduction is certainly very useful, but in reality the cooldown on Blighted Turret is the only one that will be used, and that is well under 10 seconds anyway. Long and close range damage are irrelevant to this build as they only buff weapon damage. That really only leaves you with status power, which does buff your toxic damage and so is worth taking. The most important mod for this build is Massacre, which increases your Anomaly power by 38,000 for 6 seconds every kill with your minigun, stacking up to 6 times, a potential buff of 228,000 Anomaly power. This is really easy to activate as well, one pack of Perfora will do it. Given that Anomaly power buffs your minigun damage, your turret damage and your stasis effect damage, you can see why this mod is so strong. There are two other mods that also make this build work. Bang for your buck doubles your base ammo to 340 rounds, and Fortify increases your armour by 187,000 when your minigun is active. Yes, 187,000 armour. With this up, there is no real need to run any other survivability mods. One of the downsides though of this build is you move incredibly slowly, and I'm not exaggerating here, it's painful how slow you walk. This makes the Broodmother's AoE attack quite dangerous as you can't move out of them very quickly. That is why I've picked up 40% resistance in my class tree, and with this you're able to heal yourself through the damage you will inevitably take from this. But if you're still struggling with survivability after this, I would suggest running Life of the Party from the Fighter's Mask. Life of the Party is a unique damage mitigation mod in that it works independently of armour and resistance. So if 8 enemies attack you, you will in theory have 106% physical damage reduction. You will be immune to all physical damage in all respects, and have 64% resistance. It doesn't get much tankier than that. I have seen circular power recommended, but I wouldn't take it myself. I've never found anomaly damage to be a big problem with the 40% resistance you have, combined with all the self-healing that you do. The rest of the mods I am running are all damage mods. Radical Therapy and Euthanizer buff damage against enemies afflicted by Toxic by a combined 40%, and Freezing Boost and Shatter do the same against enemies afflicted by Freeze. Finally, Captain Hunter buffs damage against elites by 25%. Now if you don't have the tier 3 mods Euthanizer, Shatter and Captain Hunter, I would recommend taking mods that buff your minigun through upgraded gun or untouchable, your turret through armor reduction, and your anomaly power through rejuvenation or stand tall, or even damage dealing mods like Seismic Impulse or Untamed Power. The latter can be very powerful once your anomaly power is buffed to the max. Do avoid any mods that work off critical hits though, as you can't crit with the minigun. If you don't have the tier 3 mod Quartermaster, then a good option would be to take the skill Shrapnel or Pain Launcher instead of fixing Wave. Given that these scale off your anomaly power, they can hit very hard. I have had Shrapnel hit for over 1 million damage with this build, when used in conjunction with the well-named mod War Damage. If you do go this route, then you could tweak your class tree as shown now to allow you to pick up Tech Bond and its 50% anomaly power buff. Because you will be using your minigun all the time, your weapons are largely unimportant. In theory, none of the mods or stats on these weapons will have any impact at all. Just in case though, I have modded Fortress onto both of them. You never know what bug will be active this week. The biggest challenge with this build is its lack of mobility, which makes many of the expeditions unplayable. You need expeditions where the enemies are keen to face tank you, and you don't have to move too far to get to them. Archways of Enoch, Scorched Lands, Colosseum and to some extent Stargrave all fit this mould. At the start of each area, run to a point where you know the enemies will spawn, pop your minigun, throw out your turret whenever it is off cooldown. When enemies are in melee range, punch them to apply Toxic and Freeze, and then just melt them down. For bosses, use ads to keep your ammo up, and anomaly power stacks as well, using Quartermaster when that isn't possible. I will be honest and say that I don't like playing this build particularly, but it is incredibly easy to get CT15 golds with it on the right expeditions. You will not go down as long as your minigun stays active, and it melts enemy once your anomaly power buffs start stacking up. I think this is a great build to get to CT15 and to farm for legendaries when you are there. Just don't expect any speedruns with it. Until next time, casual out.